Freddie Mercury, 5th September 1946, 24th of November 1991.
The location of Freddie Mercury's ashes remains one of music's biggest mysteries. You know how for decades fans have been searching for Freddie's exact resting place? Well, there's a reason it's been so hard to find. And the latest insider report doesn't just blow the lid off the mystery, it raises questions no one ever expected to ask. Why, after 34 years, is this secret finally coming to light? Trust me, what was uncovered isn't just shocking, it's emotional. Stay with me till the very end, because the final piece of the puzzle is the most shocking part of all. The truth about Freddie Mercury's final resting place. When Freddie Mercury died in 1991 from complications from AIDS, it was heartbreaking. And honestly, the world lost someone irreplaceable.
Our music was very pompous and very serious, and people thought, oh God, what a load of bores, you know?
His voice, his presence, the way he lit up the stage. There's never been another like him. But when it came to his death, and especially what happened after, he was so private. He'd been open with very few people about his illness, and when he passed, his funeral and everything around it were kept intentionally low-key. That wasn't just a vibe, it was a plan. Now, this part is really important. Freddie was cremated. That's not speculation, that's a documented fact. His cremation happened at Kensal Green Cemetery in West London, and his ashes were held there for a while, over a year, actually, before anyone collected them. So this idea of someone opening a tomb with his body inside, it literally doesn't make any sense. There's no tomb to open. There's no buried coffin waiting to be unearthed. The stories are dramatic, yes, and they feed into that whole internet culture of mystery and shock value, but they just don't line up with reality. For 34 years, fans from all over the world have left flowers, notes, and tears at what they believed was Freddie Mercury's final resting place. But what if we told you that tomb may not have been what it seemed at all? What they recently discovered has not only shocked the world, it's left fans, historians, and even Freddie's closest friends asking, was this the plan all along? Why was his tomb kept such a mystery? Stick with us, because what's revealed at the very end should not be missed. Now, let's talk about Mary Austin for a second, because she is such a key figure in all of this. Freddie called her his common-law wife, even though they weren't together romantically anymore. But their bond? Unshakable. He trusted her with everything, including his ashes. She's the only person who knows exactly where he's laid to rest. And let me tell you, Mary takes that promise seriously. She said it herself. I made a promise on his deathbed that I would never reveal where his ashes were. I do know where they are, but that's all I have to say on it. Can you imagine the pressure of carrying that kind of secret for over 3 decades? Freddie was clear with her. He didn't want anyone to know. He told her, I know exactly where I want you to put me, but nobody is to know because I don't want anyone to dig me up. I just want to rest in peace. That right there should be the end of the story. But the internet just loves a good mystery, doesn't it? Mary went to extreme lengths to make sure his wish was honored. She kept the urn in his bedroom at Garden Lodge, his London home, for about 2 whole years. Now, there was that weird little moment in 2013 when fans stumbled on a memorial plaque at Kensal Green. It said, Farrokh Bulsara, Freddie's birth name, with French text and signed with an M. People freaked out. It was like, is this it? Is this the secret? But just as quickly as it appeared, the plaque disappeared. Poof! No explanation, which only fueled more theories and speculation. Was it real? A tribute? A prank? Nobody knows. And Mary? She stayed silent, as always. There are so many theories floating around about where his ashes actually are. Some people say they're buried under a cherry tree at Garden Lodge. suggested by Jim Hutton, Freddie's partner in his later years. Others believe they were scattered in Zanzibar, where Freddie was born. Then there's the theory that he's by the shore of Lake Geneva in Montreux, Switzerland, a place he loved deeply. And, of course, some folks still insist he's at Kensal Green. But here's the kicker. None of these theories have ever been confirmed. And honestly, that's kind of beautiful, because at the heart of it, all this noise about his tomb being opened completely misses the point. It's not about finding a physical place. It's about understanding that Freddie did not want to be found. That was his wish. And Mary? She's honored that with a level of grace and respect that's moving. She once said, "Nobody will ever know where he is buried, because that was his wish." And you know what? After all these years, she's still kept that promise. That's not just commitment. That's love. Mary Austin, the guardian of Mercury's secret. Mary Austin and Freddie Mercury's story is not your typical love story, and not your usual friendship either. It's one of those rare, deep, soul-binding connections that you don't really have words for. You just feel it. You know how sometimes you meet someone and it's like the world just makes a little more sense when they're around? That was Mary for Freddie. And she wasn't just a chapter in his life, she was practically the whole book. Mary Austin was just 19 when she met Freddie, and he was 24. Young, ambitious, and already glowing with that larger-than-life energy. Their relationship started as romantic, sure, but over time, it became something that completely blurred the lines between love, friendship, family, and something even deeper. They broke up romantically in 1976, after Freddie told her he was bisexual, which, let's be real, must have been such a complicated moment for both of them. But instead of ending, their bond just shifted. It didn't dissolve, it evolved. And that's what makes their story so unforgettable. I mean, when Freddie said, "All my lovers ask me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible," you felt that. He wasn't just being poetic, he meant it. He literally called her his common-law wife. Like, what even is that, if not the purest form of connection? This was someone he couldn't imagine life without, and he didn't want to. Even as he went on to date men and live his truth, Mary was still right there. His constant, his rock, his home base. Isn't that wild? And kind of beautiful. And it's not like they clung to each other out of habit or nostalgia. They chose each other every time, even when they were with other people. Even when their lives went in different directions, they just kept circling back. Freddie once said, "I'll love her until I draw my last breath." And spoiler alert, he really did. She was literally holding his hand when he died. That says everything, doesn't it? Now, here's where the story gets even more powerful. When Freddie was dying, his body weakening from AIDS, the world closing in, he gave Mary a task that no one else in the world was trusted with. Not his bandmates, not his parents, not his lovers, just her. He asked her to take care of his ashes after he died, but not just that. He wanted the location of his final resting place to be a complete secret. No one could know, not even his parents. Because he was genuinely afraid that fans might try to find him, maybe even dig him up, like what's happened to other famous people. Can you imagine having to carry that responsibility? That level of trust? That kind of final, sacred promise? Mary didn't just agree, she delivered. And she did it quietly, without drama, without attention, without leaking a single thing. 2 whole years after his death, she still hadn't scattered his ashes. She kept them in his bedroom, just sitting with that grief and that promise, until she felt ready to act. When she finally did it, she didn't tell anyone. She didn't take a driver. She didn't make a big deal. She literally told the house staff she was going out for a facial. She slipped out alone, carrying the urn in a plain bag. No ceremony, no theatrics, just love. Can you believe that? That level of devotion? And what's even more amazing is that she's never cracked. Not once. Decades have passed, and to this day, no one knows where Freddie is buried. Not a single clue. People have speculated. Some say Switzerland, some say his backyard garden. But Mary? She just smiles politely and says nothing. Because, in her own words, I never betrayed Freddie in his lifetime, and I'll never betray him now. And that hits different, doesn't it? It's not even about secrecy anymore. It's about keeping something sacred between just the two of them. It's also worth noting that Freddie backed up that trust in every way imaginable. When he died, he left Mary half of his estate, half of £75 million, not to mention his 28-room mansion in Kensington. And when his parents passed away, her share increased to 75%. Like, that's massive. You don't just leave someone that kind of wealth unless they are your person. And Mary? She's still living in that mansion, quiet as ever, guarding not just his ashes, but the entire legacy of their bond. Of course, not everyone in Freddie's circle was thrilled about her role in his life after his death. There's been tension, especially with some of Queen's remaining members, and whispers that she distanced herself from them. But honestly, can you blame her? Sometimes grief makes people grow apart, and besides, she didn't owe anyone an explanation. She was doing what Freddie asked of her, what he needed from her, and she's done it perfectly. So when people talk about Freddie Mercury's final resting place and the mystery that still surrounds it, it always comes back to Mary. She's the keeper of that secret. She's the guardian of his final wish. And more than anything, she's the one who proved over and over that their relationship was beyond labels, beyond logic, beyond time. It wasn't just a romance. It wasn't just a friendship. It was something else entirely. Something that most of us could only hope to experience once in a lifetime. What do you get when you mix one of the greatest rock stars of all time with a secret tomb, 3 decades of silence, and a surprise that no one could have predicted? You get this story. Freddie Mercury may have left us in 1991, but it turns out he wasn't quite finished speaking to the world. Buckle up, because this story takes you on a journey through fame, mystery, love, and one of the biggest surprises in music history. You'll want to stick around till the very last second, because what's revealed at the end will leave you speechless. Mercury's last request, and why it matters. You know, the way Freddie Mercury handled his final days, it's one of those stories that just sticks with you. Especially when you really sit and think about everything he was facing. Like, imagine being one of the most iconic performers to ever walk this earth, beloved by millions, practically worshipped by fans, and still choosing to retreat into the most private corners of your life when it mattered most. That's exactly what Freddie did. His health was seriously declining in 1991, and even though the world was watching, speculating, whispering, and writing headlines, Freddie stayed quiet. Not out of shame, not because he didn't care, but because he wanted to protect something so deeply personal. His peace, his dignity, and the legacy he would leave behind. Isn't it wild to think that someone who could command a stadium full of people with just one flick of his wrist or raise of an eyebrow, someone who lived so loud and bold on stage, could be so deeply private when the curtain came down? But that was Freddie. He wasn't just protecting himself. He was also protecting everyone he loved and the life he'd carefully built away from the spotlight. He was fiercely private. Even his last public statement, just 24 hours before he passed, was so simple, so direct, and yet so deeply personal. He said, "My privacy has always been very special to me, and I am famous for my lack of interviews." And wow, isn't that just classic Freddie? still making sure he was in control of his story, even at the very end. Mary Austin, the woman he once called the love of his life. Even though their relationship evolved beyond romance, she later opened up about one of Freddie's most heartfelt wishes. He didn't want anyone to know where he'd be buried. The man who gave the world so much music, so much energy, wanted his final resting place to be a secret. And not just because he was shy or private. No, it was deeper than that. He was afraid, rightly so, that fans might become so obsessed that they'd actually try to dig him up. Sounds extreme, right? But when you're a legend, obsession from fans can go from sweet to scary real quick. He'd seen it happen with other celebrities. Graves were vandalized, tombstones stolen, entire cemeteries overwhelmed by fans with flash cameras and flowers. Freddie didn't want that. He wanted peace. And Mary honored that promise. To this day, nobody knows where his ashes were scattered. That secret died with her. But even while his body was fading, Freddie's spirit never did. Isn't that just something? Elton John, one of his closest friends, came to see him near the end, and he painted such a picture. It just breaks your heart and warms it all at once. There was Freddie, in bed, surrounded not just by medicine and pill bottles, but by auction catalogs for Japanese art. Still flipping through pages, dreaming about the next beautiful piece to own. Elton said, "He's not thinking about dying whatsoever. He's still thinking about art." And if that doesn't tell you the kind of man Freddie was, honestly, what does? Even when his body was giving up, his love for beauty and life and creativity was still burning like a fire. And let's not forget the time he was living in. The early 1990s weren't like today when it comes to conversations about illness or identity, or even just being open. Back then, AIDS wasn't just a disease, it was a full-blown stigma.
At the end of the interview, I said to him, "Freddie, I'm going to have to ask you something. Have you HIV?"
People lost their jobs, their homes, their respect, and their dignity because of it. So, of course, Freddie kept his diagnosis close to his chest. Can you blame him? He waited until literally one day before he died to confirm it publicly. One single day. And even then, his statement wasn't some dramatic revelation. It was calm. It was dignified. It was so very Freddie. "I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS. However, the time has come now for my friends and fans around the world to know the truth." Just like that. And honestly, that decision wasn't just about privacy. It was survival. Peter Freestone, his longtime assistant, later shared that Freddie had everything planned. The timing of the statement, the funeral, everything. Because he knew that if he didn't say it his way, the media would twist the narrative. He also knew, tragically, that AIDS stigma could follow you even into death. Isn't that heartbreaking? To have to worry about how people will treat your memory just because of how you died? But Freddie knew. He was aware. And that's why he guarded everything so fiercely. When you think about it, Freddie's final decisions, like keeping his burial site hidden, waiting until the last minute to speak on his illness, and even surrounding himself with art instead of sorrow, were all deeply personal forms of power. They were about control in a world where he had so often been poked and prodded by public opinion. They were about dignity, about keeping something just for himself after sharing so much with the rest of us. And even after he passed, his home, Garden Lodge in Kensington, became this sort of sacred space for fans. People gathered. They cried. They left flowers and poems and drawings on the walls. Some of those memorials are still there today. That was the impact he had. But he didn't want that kind of attention to follow his remains. He didn't want his grave to become another stop on some fan's bucket list. He wanted to disappear into the universe in peace. Isn't that just beautiful in its way? So when we talk about Freddie Mercury, we often talk about the voice, the fashion, the charisma, the concerts that felt like spiritual experiences. But there was also this quiet strength in the way he chose to leave this world. A man who made the loudest noise on stage left in the quietest way possible. And honestly, that's the most Freddie thing he could have done. In the end, his last request wasn't just about secrecy. It wasn't just about being private. It was about reclaiming his story in a time when disease tried to write it for him. It was about pushing back against a world that wasn't always kind. It was about love, for himself, for Mary, for those who truly knew him. And maybe, just maybe, it was his way of whispering one final message to the world. Remember me for the music, for the joy, for the fire. Not for the illness, not for the struggle, not for the grave. How Mary hid the ashes. For 2 whole years, 730 days to be exact, Freddie Mercury's ashes quietly stayed in his bedroom at Garden Lodge, resting there in that very same house he once filled with laughter, music, and his famously extravagant spirit. Can you picture that? The same room where he once woke up humming melodies or probably threw on one of his dramatic robes just for fun, became the silent keeper of what remained of him after his passing. And here's the part that really gets you. It wasn't some grand display, no public shrine, no glass case or velvet ropes. Just a bedroom. His bedroom. And you have to ask yourself, why there and why so long? Well, the answer is wrapped up in one person, Mary Austin. She was more than just Freddie's friend. She was his ride or die, his rock, the woman he once called the love of my life, even long after their romantic relationship had ended. And when he passed in 1991 and was cremated at Kensal Green Cemetery, the ashes didn't go straight home with anyone. Nope. They sat there at the crematorium for months before Mary finally came to collect them. And when she did, she made this incredibly intimate, emotional decision.
It took a long while for me to really fall in love with this man. But once there, I could never turn away from him.
She brought him back to the house he had loved, the house he had left to her in his will, and placed his ashes in his bedroom. But here's the emotional part. Mary couldn't even go into that room. She barely stepped foot in there. I mean, think about that. Living in a house where someone you loved with your whole heart once lived and died, and not being able to face the one space that probably held the deepest memories? It's heavy. She later said, I almost never went in the room because the memories of his final days, here bedbound and frail, were too vivid and painful. And honestly, who could blame her? It's not like grief comes with a guidebook, right? You do your best to function, to move through your days, but sometimes just opening a door can bring back everything you've been trying so hard to hold together. And it wasn't like this was some short-term thing. According to people close to her, Mary couldn't even bring herself to spend proper time in that room for 5 years. 5 years of walking past it, of probably glancing at it from the hallway and feeling that wave of sadness crash all over again. Can you imagine what that kind of loss does to someone? That's not just missing someone. That's a kind of heartache that becomes part of your bones. But eventually, Mary knew it was time. She remembered Freddie's final wish. He didn't want the world to know where his ashes would be scattered. He had seen what happened to other famous people. Grave sites becoming shrines, fans turning mourning into obsession. And he was terrified of that. He just wanted peace, privacy. And he asked her to make sure he got that. So she came up with a plan. Not a big, dramatic plan. No entourage, no ceremony, just Mary, on a mission only she truly understood. She invited Freddie's parents over to Garden Lodge one last time. She let them say prayers and grieve, but she didn't tell them what she was about to do. It wasn't about secrecy to hurt anyone. It was about protecting Freddie. And maybe, in some way, protecting her own heart, too. And then came the secret mission. She didn't even tell the staff. Why? Because, in her words, staff gossip. They just cannot resist it. And she had a point. Could you imagine if even one person found out what she was doing? It would have been in the tabloids before the ashes even touched the ground. So she played it cool, told everyone she was going for a facial, skipped the usual driver, carried the urn, not in anything fancy, but in a regular plastic bag. Just this ordinary-looking woman on an ordinary-looking day, doing something unbelievably sacred. She went alone. No one followed. No one asked questions. No one even knew what she was carrying. And to this day, no one knows where she went. Not even his parents. That was part of the promise. And when she was asked later, all she said was this cryptic line that gives me chills every time. He is not there. That's it. No follow-up, no explanation, just that. It's kind of wild, isn't it? The idea that someone so larger than life, someone who could command a stadium of 70,000 people with just the lift of a hand, could have his final resting place hidden in such quiet secrecy. But maybe that's exactly what he wanted. Not fireworks, not fanfare, just to rest. And Mary? Well, she kept that promise with every ounce of love and loyalty she had left. She protected him in death the same way she had protected him in life. She didn't try to turn his memory into something for public consumption. She held it close, like something fragile and precious. And even now, decades later, the mystery of where Freddie Mercury truly rests remains untouched. Because Mary made sure of it. How Mercury prepared for his death. Freddie got his AIDS diagnosis in 1987, but he didn't broadcast it to the world. He quietly let a few trusted friends in on it and kept it moving. Can you imagine carrying something that heavy and still showing up to work like a boss? Some fans even believe the first signs of him struggling might have shown up as early as 1982, during Queen's Saturday Night Live performance. And still, he kept going. That's the kind of strength that doesn't make headlines, but stays with people forever. He waited until November 23, 1991, just one day before he passed, to publicly confirm he had AIDS. One day. Like, what kind of bravery is that? Choosing to control the narrative even when you're at your weakest. That's Freddie. Peter Freestone, his longtime assistant and close friend, once said that Freddie made the decision to stop his meds when he felt the time was right. No one pushed him. No one rushed him. He had this quiet dignity about it, like, okay, I know what this is now. I'm going to use the time I have left wisely. And that's exactly what he did. Instead of just fading away, he leaned in. He started calling friends, having those big heart-to-hearts, wrapping up all the loose ends. Who does that? Seriously. Now, here's where it gets even more beautiful. Freddie did not stop making music. Even with his body getting weaker, he was still in the studio in Switzerland, recording like it was his first day on the job. The man lived for music. Producer Dave Richards talked about how Freddie was literally dying while laying down those final vocals, and he knew he wouldn't be around to see the songs released. But did that stop him? No. He looked at his bandmates, Brian May, Roger Taylor, John Deacon, and basically said, "Keep it coming. Give me more songs. I just want to sing. I'll record my parts now, and when I'm gone, you guys finish the rest." I mean, how do you even respond to that? That's not just professionalism, that's love, that's devotion. And get this, they put up these massive 6-foot partitions in the studio just so he could have some privacy from people walking by.
There's something that you can't do all at once. I mean, you've just got to be in the right sort of stage in your career to do larger things like you.
He was this superstar, and yet he was physically fading away in a tiny recording booth, pushing through each take. Sometimes he needed a shot of vodka just to get through the vocals, but when he opened his mouth, that voice, still pure magic. Like how? How did his voice stay so powerful when his body was falling apart? It's one of those things that just doesn't make sense unless you believe in miracles. Or maybe just in Freddie Mercury. The last song he ever recorded was called Mother Love. But guess what? He didn't even finish it. He laid down most of the vocals and then said, "I'll come back to it later." But that later never came. He left the studio in May of 1991, and he never returned. Can you feel the weight of that? Like, it's haunting. It's poetic. It's Freddie, giving everything he had until there was nothing left to give. And just when you think that's the end of it, oh no, Freddie had one more surprise up his sleeve. You're gonna love this. So before he passed, he arranged something so heartbreakingly thoughtful. He made sure that every Christmas, his closest friends and godchildren would receive a special gift from him. He literally contacted Fortnum & Mason in London and told them to deliver these luxurious Christmas hampers every single year. And they're still being delivered, decades later, thanks to his estate. Who thinks of that when they're dying? Like, who thinks, I want my friends to feel loved at Christmas, even if I'm not here? Freddie Mercury, that's who. And then there's Elton John's story. It'll punch you right in the gut. So, on Christmas morning in 1991, a few weeks after Freddie died, Elton gets this package. Inside is this beautiful watercolor painting, wrapped in a pillowcase, and a little note signed Melina, which was Freddie's cheeky little drag name. Elton just broke down crying. He said he was dying, and he still thought of his friends. And that right there, that's Freddie Mercury in a nutshell. Glamorous, fierce, stubborn, deeply private, but so full of love, so full of heart. People can argue all day about his greatest live performance or whether Bohemian Rhapsody is the best rock song ever. That's cool and all, but the real legacy? It's in these quiet, tender moments, in how he chose to die on his own terms, in how he refused to be remembered as a victim, in how he made sure the people he loved would always have a piece of him, especially around the holidays. Isn't that just beautiful? With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.